In order to have complete control over women, you must learn how to manipulate them. And the ability to manipulate, like most things, is a skill you can learn. I'm Jace, and I'm going to be teaching you the skill of manipulation. After almost 10 plus years of experience in cold approach pickup, social dynamics, relationships, and dating, and just flat out manipulating women, I believe I'm qualified to let you know a few things about how manipulation actually works, and more specifically, how to make it work for you. In total, I'm going to be teaching you about 7 foundational principles of manipulation. 7 principles that I have personally taken at the time to condense all of the things you need to know about manipulation into. But I must give you a few disclaimers before we continue. First things first, if you're under the age of 25, still a virgin, or have never been in a position of leadership and authority, then you are not at the level of experience or maturity to take any of the things I say in this presentation without hurting yourself or others. You are strongly advised to not watch the rest of this. What I'm about to talk about has the power to change both your life and the lives of others around you. And power corrupts. You've been warned. Secondly, if you happen to meet the requirements to watch this presentation, then I highly suggest that you use everything that you learn from this presentation on people you do not have close ties with. If you try to use the things you learn here on people that you are closely acquainted with, things could end up very, very bad for you. Do not try these at home. With that said, let's go deeper into what manipulation actually is. Simply put, manipulation is the ability to masterfully control something or someone to achieve a certain result. In other words, all manipulation to some degree is a means to an end. Now, before you go off feeling guilty about controlling someone else, you have to understand a few things. For one, people do not mind being manipulated. In fact, people are often looking for opportunities to be manipulated because it helps them to take away the burden of responsibility for their own choices. It's the reason we constantly look for figures of authority and leaders to blame everything on. Remember what happened during COVID? That's a perfect example. And secondly, as humans, we endure multiple attempts of manipulation on a daily basis. Manipulation can take many different forms. It's all the people you're acquainted with making attempts at trying to get your attention. It's the ads and notifications you see. It's the charismatic leader trying to get you to join his cause. The politician trying to get you to vote for him in the upcoming election. Hell, it's even the well-placed golden arches that makes you want to take a right turn into the drive-thru. Someone out there is constantly trying to get you to follow their lead, join their cause, meet their goals, boost their number, or whatever other selfish agenda they may have. Hell, even this video is an attempt at manipulating you. Because make no mistake, I too have an agenda. All you need to know is that manipulation in itself is not a bad thing. Some people use it for good and to create win-win situations in their lives and in the lives of others, while others use it for rather nefarious and selfish reasons. You get to decide how you want to use it. I'm hoping you use it for good. And to be honest, speaking from experience, using it for good is better long-term. Without any further ado, here are the 7 principles of manipulation that you need to know. Number 1, in order to successfully manipulate, you need leverage. Plain and simple, it is impossible to manipulate without any leverage at all. And as far as manipulation goes, leverage is threefold. 1, you must do research on your subject to find out what they really want. This research is paramount because it's the foundation of everything you'll be needing moving forward. The better you know them and what they want, the better you'll understand why exactly they want it. For instance, a girl can say that she likes muscular men, but in reality, what she really truly wants is to feel safe. But for whatever reason, she equates muscles to safety. If you're creative enough, you can provide her the safety she needs without the presence of muscles. Which brings me into the second part of having leverage over your subject. You must demonstrate to your subject that you have a deep understanding of their wants and needs. This will not only help them feel understood, which everybody wants, it will also help to lower their emotional and psychological defenses. If they truly believe that you understand them better than anyone else, they instantly become more agreeable to you. The experience of being truly understood by another person is very rare for most people. Which brings me to the third point of leverage over your subject. You must convince your subject that you're the only person that can help them fulfill their wants and needs. The only person on the planet that can do so. This is where leverage as a principle is at its most powerful. The moment your subject truly believes that you are their only source of fulfillment, satisfaction, or status increase, they are truly deeply yours. Now, as long and as drawn out as it may sound, the process of gaining leverage over your subject can happen in mere seconds. It's not complex at all. Techniques like storytelling, cold reading, and anxiety-inducing flirting are specifically designed for this. From the very moment you identify a subject, you must do everything in your power to assert some kind of leverage over them. If not, your ability to manipulate will be severely hindered or completely foiled altogether. Please keep in mind, being indispensable is key and leverage is everything. The second law of manipulation is that all manipulation happens in a vacuum. Even when they're being spoken to as part of a crowd, people can only be manipulated on an individual level. That is to say that each attempt at manipulation is specifically unique to every individual, which also means that for each attempt at manipulation that you make, you must have a specific individual or a specific kind of individual in mind every time. When it comes to manipulation, specificity is everything. This is why in marketing, which is just manipulation at scale, there's a heavy emphasis on targeting specific niches and demographics and building the ideal customer avatar. Because the more specific you're targeting, the better. And manipulation is an endeavor that requires laser-like focus. Another form of a vacuum you see with regards to manipulation is isolation, taking your subject away from what would be considered their comfort zone and moving them to a different private physical location. Not only does that help to remove any physical distractions in the area, it also gives you the space and time to deal with psychological objections as well. Again, without input from third parties. Another form of a vacuum is an ideological one. If you can place your subject in a den where everyone in it alongside them keeps regurgitating the exact same ideology over and over and over, then eventually over time that ideology solidifies and becomes their reality. Politicians and political speakers in general do this all the time. They speak to a certain demographic, they use dog whistles, code words, and buzzwords, and they earn the trust and the favors of the people that listen to them and understand what they're saying. That's a vacuum. The better you are at creating a bubble where only you and your subject exists, the better you will be at manipulation. And more importantly, the better the results of the manipulation itself will be. The next law of manipulation is understanding that the mind and the body are always connected. Your subject's psychology can be used to affect their physiology and vice versa. In general, men are more logical and linear in their thinking. Usually, not all the time, his brain takes precedent over his body. Even when he's doing something that may seem impulsive, there's usually some level of logic attached to it. So when it comes to influencing and manipulating men, using reason is a better approach. Again, not to say that men are cybernetic robots that never succumb to their biological impulses, but in general, it's just a good idea to appeal to the senses of men. Women, on the other hand, are a different creature. Women are more prone to prioritize the feelings and sensations that they have in their bodies almost 100% of the time. So if you wish to manipulate a woman, it makes more sense to attack her physiology, not her psychology. This is why I place so much emphasis on tension during a conversation with a woman. Because tension, especially when experienced by women, is primarily a physical response. Manipulating the way she feels in her body, whether those feelings be positive pulling forces, the carrot on the stick, so to speak, or those feelings be negative pushing forces, the whip on the back, so to speak. They all help to manipulate the woman towards your own selfish agendas. There's a reason the saying is change her mood, not her mind. And by the way, this is something I feel like I really need to emphasize on here. A lot of men make the mistake of trying to reason with their women. They go out of their way to construct very logical arguments. They try to make her understand his point of view, which is also very linear in thinking. And they may even try to do logical things that have no effect whatsoever on how she feels, which ends up leading to a lot of heartache and frustration. Because that's just not how women work. That's not what they respond to. Instead of trying to navigate your way through women logically, do something far simpler and far more effective, like changing the way she feels in the moment. If you ask her for a certain level of compliance and she doesn't want to comply, don't try to give her logical reasons why she should. You'll be met with nothing but resistance. Instead, change the way she feels about the compliance. The better she feels about it, the more likely she is to comply eventually. In general, you must always be cognizant of that mind-body connection in women. And remember to go for the body, not the head. Figuratively speaking, of course. The next law of manipulation is that manipulation isn't always subtle and covert. Believe it or not, some manipulation happens in broad daylight in your face. These are the stronger, more potent types of manipulation, and they don't need to be subtle. A good example of that would be something like slavery. Trust me, Massa wasn't covert or subtle about his control over his slaves. There was absolutely no need to be because he had so much leverage over his subjects. And that right there is the major difference between strong and weak manipulation tactics. The actual amount of leverage you have over your subjects. The more leverage you have over your subject, the more overt you can be about your manipulation. The less leverage you have, the more subtle you have to be. Now, to be fair, manipulation almost always starts covertly, and that's because of the natural built-in defenses most people have against manipulation. The most important and most powerful defense by far being awareness. That's right, the cure to most manipulation tactics is becoming aware of what's going on. The moment you become aware of what's actually going on, you take back control of your mind and you snap out of it. A huge part of why this is the case is because of observation bias. Observing the process changes the process. It's kind of like knowing the secrets to a magic trick. Nothing looks the same the moment you know how it works behind the curtains. So while you manipulate, it's important that you remain as subtle as possible. I highly suggest you read up on things like conversational hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming. These are essentially the dark arts with regards to manipulation, and I personally guarantee you they will change the way you communicate for the rest of your life. The best thing about conversational hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming is that they thrive on and prioritize subtlety, especially in execution. Over time, as you continue to manipulate your subject, you can afford to become more obvious with your strategy without risking losing any control. But to be honest, in general, you want to remain as subtle as you can for as long as possible. There's a lot less resistance to your manipulation when your subject has no idea what's going on. This is not the time to be noble. Give your subject the blue pill and keep them in the matrix as long as you can. The next law of manipulation is that tension is your friend. It is impossible to manipulate someone without having leverage over them. And the reason you need to have leverage over them is because leverage is the fastest way to induce tension into your subject. And the masterful creation, sustenance, and breaking of tension is the very foundation of manipulation. Essentially, you cannot manipulate anyone unless they have a reason to be tense around you. Without sounding too unethical, you can essentially use the tension to hold them hostage. Tension in itself is an uncomfortable feeling. Most people are uncomfortable under tension, and it's that need for comfort from tension that'll give you the ability to manipulate your subject. They'll do just about anything to move away from the tension. So your best move is to use that as an opportunity to gain more compliance from them. The more tense your subject feels, the more they're willing to do to alleviate the tension, which means the more compliance you can get out of them. It's unethical business practices 101. You create the problem and then you subsequently offer the solution. Now you might be thinking to yourself, this level of control and this method of control is kind of fucked up. My argument to that would be, no it's not, and here's why. Manipulation is essentially controlling the motivations of your subject. And motivation in itself is twofold. The first is a pulling motion that drives you towards your goal, and the second is a pushing motion that drives you away from the consequences of not achieving your goal. A carrot on a stick in front of you and a whip on your back behind you. You need both at the same time to motivate properly. Think of tension as that whip on the back. Man, I'm wrong for this. But you get the point. You may not need the pulling and pushing forces in equal measure, but you do need both to some degree for effective manipulation. In fact, here's a quick side note when it comes to women. For the rest of your life, and I'm not saying that to exaggerate, whenever you want to make contact with a woman over the phone, just when you're about to shoot her a text or a call, I want you to ask yourself 2 questions. And I really want you to be honest with yourself about the answer to these questions. And take your time to go outside of your own self and look at things from her perspective. The first question before you attempt to make contact with this woman, is there any positive reward in it for her that she's already aware of? Emphasis on already aware of, by the way. Is there something within the context of you and her that she truly wants to feel, see, and experience again? And again, that she is already aware of. Because it doesn't matter how amazing you think you are. If she's not aware of it consciously, then it might as well not exist. The second question is there any adverse consequence she's trying to run away from that she can only get away from by making contact with you? For instance, curiosity for an unanswered question, closure for an ended previous relationship, figuring you out because you're mysterious, etc. If you're being completely honest with yourself and you know the answer to any of these 2 questions is no, then I'm gonna need you to put the phone down, bucko. She's not hitting you back up because there's simply no urgency or motivation involved, neither positive nor negative. And you need at least one to establish control. The next law of manipulation is that trust is paramount. It's important that your subject has real trust for you. But in order to build trust with your subject, we have to understand what trust is to begin with. To put it simply, trust is predictability. You trust someone when you can accurately predict their next move. Contrary to popular belief, it has almost nothing to do with love, respect, or understanding. You trust someone when you know what they're going to do next, plain and simple. Or more specifically, you trust someone when you think you know what they're going to do next. Like I said in the previous law, leverage is important for manipulation. And you can get to the point where you have so much leverage over your subject that your manipulation no longer needs to be covert or subtle, at which point you can become more overt and obvious about your manipulation tactics. But at this point, despite how much leverage you have over your subject, you also risk resentment. The only thing that can halt betrayal, resentment, and defiance on your subject's part is your subject having unwavering trust for you. Like I said in the beginning of this presentation, people are looking to be told what to do. People are looking to be manipulated and told what to do by a charismatic leader. However, they also want to trust that leader. They want to rest assured that that leader has their best interest in mind. They want to explicitly trust that leader. And in order for that to happen, they have to see a track record of that leader consistently acting in their best interest. This is why I conveniently synonymize trust and predictability. In a matter of speaking, they are one and the same thing. In order to be an expert manipulator, you must learn how to convey predictability. And the better you get at manipulation, you can even begin to fake predictability. An example of faking predictability is something I've used over the years that professional poker players do. Poker is a game that requires you to heavily rely on reading your opponent's body language to build your own strategy, while also trying not to give off too much in the way of your own body language, or tells as they're called. At the highest level, poker players are not only good at being able to figure out their opponent's tell, but they can also disguise and fake their own to throw off their opponents. By moving in a predictable pattern for a certain period of time, you can convince your opponent of a tell that doesn't actually exist. The same exact principle can be used to manipulate your subject. Choosing to act in a certain way over a long period of time will lull your subject into a false sense of security. That way they can go away thinking they trust you, without you actually having to do anything difficult to build that trust over time. Please remember, how your relationship starts with your subject is how it'll continue to the end. Whatever you do from the beginning, you will have to continue to do for the entirety of the relationship. So be careful what it is you choose to do. Breaking a habit unexpectedly could cause a rift between you and your subject. The next law of manipulation: it is impossible to manipulate someone that is fulfilled. A crucial ingredient to being able to manipulate somebody is a lack of satisfaction or fulfillment. I've been saying this for years, but no one has milk in the fridge and still leaves the house to go get milk. You only leave to go get milk when you're fresh out. It is useless and a complete waste of time to offer someone that already has an abundance of milk any milk of your own. And yet this is what I see a lot of people out here doing. They're trying to sell ice to an Eskimo. Part of being a good manipulator is identifying those who actually want your milk. And trust me, there's a lot of subjects out there waiting for your milk. But you won't find those people if you're too busy occupying yourself with the people that don't need your milk. Whatever it is they may crave, whether it's satisfaction, companionship, intimacy, or love. These things make them weak to your manipulation and keep them dependent on you. If that hunger and thirst for completion does not exist, and they are truly fulfilled and satisfied, then it is impossible to manipulate them. Aside from awareness and observation, true fulfillment and satisfaction in life are natural deterrents of manipulation tactics. Now, while it may sound like satisfaction and fulfillment gives you complete immunity from manipulation, there is one slight hiccup. But before we get into that, quick announcement. First things first, I want to say a big thank you for all the support and a warm welcome to the 5,000 plus followers that have joined us in the last few days. But my OG followers know I'm not the kind of guy to just say thank you. I like to show my gratitude. So there's this course I've been teasing in my inner circles now for about a year called The Interview. And I've been really slow to finish production on it and put it out because of, frankly, a lot of personal things that have been happening. I don't like to complain though, so we're not going to talk about that. But I also feel very guilty for not putting out the course on time like I planned to. So I created a compromise. I took the bare bones skeleton of the course itself and I made it into a different course called the Interview LITE. And now I've put out the Interview LITE for free. It's pretty much a course that goes over the entire process of getting a woman that you don't know from scratch and completely incorporating her into your life. It goes over everything from the actual approach itself to the number close to texting to phone calls, the way those should go, setting up for the date itself, and getting lucky on the date. It is packed full of value like you wouldn't believe. And the entire course is riddled with what I call epiphany moments. Think of the Interview LITE like a summarized overview of the original interview, packed with all the same value and secrets, which is why I frankly cannot keep this one free for too long. It would frankly be stupid of me. This is my life's work. So while it's still up, I highly suggest you go click the link in my bio to gain access to it. Once you click the link, it'll be the very first button on my link tree. Thank you so much again for the support, and now back to this. Simply put, every single person on this planet lacks fulfillment in some way. Absolutely nobody walking the face of the earth is 100% complete and fulfilled. We all have a gaping hole, some bigger than others. And good manipulators are the people who are experts at finding those holes, no matter how small they may be, and subsequently filling those holes up. Pun very much intended. No matter how fulfilled, satisfied, happy, and content a person might claim to be, there's always one area of life, at least one, that they truly feel incomplete in. Once you find it, refer back to law number 1. So there you have it, 7 fundamental laws of manipulation. But me being me and the overachiever I am, I decided to add one more. And that final law is that it's impossible to manipulate someone when you yourself have never been manipulated. It is impossible to give what you do not have. And in order to give an experience, you must have had that experience. This follows the law of exposure. The more you're around something, the better you are at understanding it. As much as books and videos can help you, experience is still the best teacher. So you have to allow yourself to be manipulated to know what good manipulation feels like. The good news though is that you don't have to go through multiple traumatic events to know how manipulation works. Because like I said in the beginning, someone out there is making an attempt to manipulate you on a daily basis. All you have to do then is become more cognizant of that fact and begin to conscientiously observe the different forms of manipulation that come your way on a daily basis. You would be surprised how much you can learn in a short period of time by just sitting still and looking around. If you think of me as an amazing communicator, then guess what? When I was younger, I would literally go through hours of long-form content. Everything from speeches and rallies, sermons and talks, you name it. I would take notes and ask myself specific questions. Why does he talk like that? Why does he pause right there? Why does he walk to the one side of the stage talking about this thing and then walk to the other side of the stage talking about this other thing? Why did he lower his voice when he got to that point? And why did he take it back up when he got to this other point? Who does he keep pointing to in the crowd? There's no way he knows anyone in the crowd. It's his first time in this country. And over time, it helped to build my communication skills. If you decide to take that exact same approach, there's no limit to what you can do. Begin to become more observant and more cognizant of your world around you. And allow yourself to be led and manipulated so you can see how it's done from the perspective of the person being manipulated. That way you can learn how to lead others into your trap. And that's all I need to tell you about manipulation. I hope you actually take this to heart, go out and practice, and use this carefully. I cannot stress enough how dangerous this information is, so please, please be careful. It's been Jace, your favorite scientist, and do with this information what you must, as long as it doesn't violate the rights of others or break the laws of God. Alright, go practice.